service for Clymai's domestic abuse and gender specific provision. I've been in Clymai for 18 years, and prior to my current role, I was the manager of our young people services in Gwent. So I'm here to answer questions on homelessness and domestic abuse today.
Fantastic. And last but not least, we've got Anita Dillon.
Hiya, hi, I'm Anita Dillon. Just for those of you who don't know, I work for Careers Wales, which is an all-age advice and guidance service. In each of your schools, there'll be a careers advisor who's linked to that school and the college, and we can provide advice and guidance. I work with all the students in Newport who are educated other than school, but we have got loads of information, and if I don't speak to you again, because I know the others have got lots of questions, we have an excellent website which you can always refer to, which has loads of information on careerswales.com. Okay.
Amazing, thank you. So guys, this is today's panel. We've got Jeff, Pam, Rhiannon, Nicola and Anita, and I can't wait to see what sort of responses we get today. Without further ado, I think I'm passing over to Darcy and Charlotte, who will be facilitating this question time now. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Darcy and I'm the I'm the Youth Mayor for Blaenau Gwent. Charlotte, do you want to say anything?
Hi, I'm Charlotte and I'm the former Youth Mayor for Blaenau Gwent, and now I'm the MYP for Blaenau Gwent.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get a list of questions up for a second, sorry.
I can go ahead and ask the first question while Darcy gets it up. So the first question is from Fionn from Cymraeg Creations, and she's asking it, and the question is open to the whole panel.
Hi, I'm Fionn from Blaenau Gwent Film Academy and Cymraeg Creations. My question is, how could young people help to make the community a better place?
I have some ideas on that.
No, go on. You start. Yeah, I was just going to say we'll go in order, but no, go on, go for it.
Okay, I think that's a fabulous question. I think that we can all contribute so much to our community, however old we are, but I think young people have got so much to contribute. You know, I think during COVID there have been some lovely examples, haven't there, of communities coming together, letters being put through doors, offers of shopping being made and so on. And one thing that strikes me that young people are really exceptionally good at is social media and technology. And I guess I've been wondering about how, you know, you could use that to bring communities together, because us older people, certainly myself, are not so good at that. I think also it's about talking to each other about what's going on in your community, certainly in terms of mental health. What are the things that support your mental health? What are some of the challenges that you're facing within your local communities to your well-being? And getting a group of like-minded people together, talking to the adults around you to mobilise some support, and certainly talking with us at Gwent Community Psychology. We would love to hear your ideas on what needs to change to create better communities for your mental health and well-being, and to help shape some services around that. So just some ideas from me.
Okay, I can come in now if that's all right. I suddenly realised I'm the only man actually on the panel, but hopefully that won't detract from anything. But look, this is a great question. Young people are excellent at volunteering. That really makes a huge difference to communities, especially intergenerational work, because I know that older people really like the presence of younger people. It's good for morale, it's good for confidence, and it really does make a difference. I'm very pleased that we do have representatives from a wide range of youth organizations with us. Ed is here from the Scouts. People don't have to be in formal organizations like that. They can work informally, but it makes a huge difference. And within policing, as I'm sure Pam Kelly will want to point out we have police cadets, which make a huge difference to their local community. So there's lots of ways in which that can happen.
Okay, do you want me to go next, panel? Yep. So first of all, before I give an answer to that, I'd like to thank young people for what you've done throughout the COVID crisis, because I think young people have been hit quite hard during this time in terms of your education, in terms of not being able to meet up with friends, exams, everything such as that. And I have to say, the messages that we've had from young people here at Gwent Police have been really uplifting. A lot of people just moan and groan, don't they? But what I find with young people is they're very positive in their attitude. So my answer to the question is to get involved. So we have a social media desk. If you wish to report crime, if you feel a friend is struggling and there's a crime has been committed, please report it through social media or otherwise. Because what I can assure you of is that at Gwent Police, we listen to young people's voices. And so often it's very difficult when something happens to a young person to actually pick up that phone and contact police if you feel that a crime has happened. So I would ask you to first of all help keep each other safe by making sure that you report incidents, whether that be to adults in your community or to police if there's a crime. It's really important that you tell us what is happening. But also, I think something that really is, I actually listened to a poem written by a Welsh poet today, and one of the phrases used was to be a responsible ancestor. And we're all going to be ancestors one day in the future, for families in the future, for our families in the future. And I think your generation in particular is very wise. You've experienced so many things. COVID, you understand diversity issues, you understand environmental issues. And I think young people today more than ever know what is right and wrong. So what I would ask of you is to get involved, keep each other safe, and to challenge in a peaceful way. But I would really welcome communications from you, that whether that be emails, telephone calls. I want to know what young people think and feel. And so don't be afraid to be a really strong voice on your communities to help build better communities for the future. I've got great faith in young people of today, and I think you will build a brilliant community and be fantastic, responsible ancestors for your families in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Yeah, I can say a couple of words just from my perspective. So I work with young people, and my teams work with young people day in, day out. And what we really see as has really increased is empathy of young people to others, to older generation, to each other. And all I wanted to say absolutely just follows on from what has been said, which is about keeping an eye on each other, looking out for each other, staying safe. And in the world of domestic abuse that I spend day in, day out, it's checking in with your friends. You know, if you're remotely schooling right now, do we know what's going on in each other's homes? Are we keeping an eye on our friends? And I completely agree with that challenge. You know, challenge behaviour that's unacceptable and call it out for what it is, rather than let things happen and wish you would have said. You know, always, and the biggest movement for young people is young people challenging other young people. So I would just continue to be doing that, because actually young people are doing a tremendous job of holding other people to account right now. And I think that's really important we keep that going.
So just to add to that, so on some of the local groups, Facebook groups that I have in my area, you see the bad things about that young people. They say, oh, those groups things. But then sometimes you get the lovely posts, which are like, I would like to thank all the people that helped out my son, daughter, granny, grandpa. All of those ones are lovely. So keep doing those things. Keep random acts of kindness and watching out for everyone are really important. But other things linked into your career a little bit that you can also use for yourself are if there's community projects that you can get involved in, if you can help out grandparents and help out tidying up your area, that's other things that in future years you might forget about, but you'll go to an interview and they'll say, can you tell us an example of when you used something, when you got involved in a task and you didn't need to, and then you can use those as examples, which helps you out as well as the community. So those kind of things, just get involved, really.
Lovely, thank you. So does anybody else have anything else to add to that? Okay, so we're going to the next question, which is directed at the Chief Constable from Sarah Gunningham and the Apprentice Youth Ambassador.
Saren put something in her chat to say that her microphone, she doesn't have the option for the microphone.
Oh, that's fine.
So can somebody access her microphone for her?
Yeah, she has to be unmuted when she was going to ask the question. I don't know if anyone can unmute her. If not, Darcy, can you ask the question?
Yeah, I want to read it out. So what are the youth antisocial behaviour and crime levels like at the moment? Have you seen an increase or a decrease or any change at all of the at all over the past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, thank you, Darcy, and thank you, Seren, for the question. So the first thing to say is over the last 3 years, we've seen a decrease of about 18.3% in terms of antisocial behaviour. So that's youth crime offenders. In terms of youth crime victims is about 18.5%, and youth ASB offenders is about a 9% decrease. So we're heading in the right direction in terms of antisocial behaviour. But I think there's two sides of the coin that really I'd like to say about antisocial behaviour. Is the one side of the coin is that we all know that sometimes young people congregate and perhaps they drink alcohol, then they end up having a bit of a brawl and everything else, and that causes huge problems in the community. The other side of the coin, which I think is really important to say, is that young people having a chat on the corner of the street because they can't, they haven't been able to go into each other's houses, and a few young people, within the regulations, obviously meeting doesn't necessarily mean antisocial behaviour. So I think there are two things I would like to say. First of all, we're heading in the right direction. And the second thing is, as young people, please just share the message around perception of antisocial behaviour. So what I don't want to do is to criminalise young people. So where young people are drinking and then perhaps getting into trouble and we have to take police action, I really don't want to criminalise young people and put them at a disadvantage in their future careers. And we all enjoy being together. We all enjoy having a laugh with our friends. But I just want people to be aware of some of the things that sometimes happen in our community. The other side of things, especially as we come out of lockdown and more people are allowed to congregate, again, just be mindful of perception. So an elderly person such as my mum, and just outside her home, if there's a group of young people congregating, they may not be doing anything wrong, but that elderly person might be just a little bit concerned about the numbers congregating. So all I'm asking of young people, we're heading in the right direction. The majority of young people have behaved impeccably during COVID, and the decrease in antisocial behaviour shows that. But let's keep it that way and just understand perhaps perceptions around antisocial behaviour, young people congregating, and also where young people are being drawn into grouping together, perhaps drinking, some taking drugs. I want to know about that because I want to nip it in the bud. And I really don't want to criminalise young people, but so many people fall by the wayside by being drawn in to those sort of events. So a decrease, which is really good, but let's think about what that looks like going forward for our communities in Gwent.
Thank you so much for that answer. I'll move on to the next question now, which is for Dr. Cobner from Newport Youth Forum. The question is, suicide rates are up. We recently lost a pupil from our school community. What support is out there for young people, and how can professionals promote and ensure that young people know how to access these services, not just more information on other agencies / websites to visit?
Okay, thank you very much to the Newport Youth Forum for that question, and I have to start by saying how incredibly sorry I am to hear of such a loss in that community, and I very much hope that the family and friends of the young person involved are getting the support that they need right now. It is always a tragedy to lose somebody in that way, and somebody so young as well, so my heart goes out to them. I think the key message for me in relation to that would be, let's not be afraid of mental health. We've all got it, just in the way that we've all got physical health, and let's not run away from mental health and see it as being the domain of the experts. We can all do something to support a friend or somebody that we know is in trouble. Fundamentally, this is all about relationships, being there for each other, talking to each other, noticing when our friends are struggling a little bit and just listening to them and hearing what their difficulties are. I think that first and foremost. I think we're also doing a huge amount here in Gwent to be able to work in an early intervention and prevention capacities to stop difficulties from getting to the point where life just feels too difficult for people. So in Gwent Community Psychology, which is the service that I lead, what we're doing is taking psychology ideas out of the clinic and into communities, because we believe it's the relationships that children and young people have with the adults around them that will make fundamentally the difference to their mental health. So we're talking, for example, to youth workers about what it is that they can do to work with young people in a more psychologically minded way. An example of that is in Blaenau Gwent, where we've got one psychologist working within Blaenau Gwent Youth Service 3 days a week, training up their staff in psychological ideas, helping them to know how to make sense of young people's distress and helping them to support those young people who are struggling in the context of existing relationships. Because the last thing we want to be doing is medicalizing children's responses to what's going on in their lives, and we would love to create much more of a what we call a hold on culture, where children can be supported in the context of their ordinary relationships rather than being seen as having something wrong with them and being referred to specialist services. So that's very much the culture that we want to create. We also recognise that for some young people, things will have reached a point where they do need specialist help, and then it's important again for us to be getting the messages out there about how they can best access those. But certainly, you know, a key message for me is young people can't do this on their own. Nobody can do this on their own. We all need somebody around us to talk to support us, and let's not be scared of each other's feelings and scared to sit with some of that distress where we can.
Thank you very much for that answer. So if we go on to the next question, it's directed at Dr. Cobner from the Monmouthshire CC and Engage and Change.
I think perhaps you'd better read it out.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, in 2018, CAMHS was deemed not fit for purpose, according to an article written by the BBC last year. Last year, a person brought up the issue of CAMHS in the very last question time, and I'm sure that every young person in this room has heard of the failure of this service. What is being done to fix these problems and improve mental health services for young people?
Okay, another great question, important question. ask. And I think you're absolutely right that CAMHS has experienced a number of challenges over the year, and it's received its fair share of criticism. I don't work into a service called Specialist CAMHS, so I can't speak specifically about that service, although I know that through a number of initiatives they've managed to decrease their waiting times, which has been one of the areas that they've been criticised around. What I think it's important to share with you today is that there's a huge amount going on in Gwent in terms of children's mental health services that is actually really exciting and is actually leading the way, I think, nationally in the UK in terms of doing things differently. So as an example of that, I can talk just briefly about the service that I lead. So I lead a service called Gwent Community Psychology. And as I said a little bit earlier, that's about taking psychological ideas out of clinic and into the communities. So we've got a range of partners now. We've only been around for about 18 months, but we've got a number of partners, including the police and health, education, social care, sport and leisure, as well as youth services. And we work with those partners by offering a range of different training, consultation, group work and staff support, so that those professionals who have the relationship with children and young people can better support them in the context of their ordinary lives. So that's some of the work that we're doing. Another thing that we're quite excited about is some of our place-based work. So for an example, we have got a partnership with a football club, and we are looking to develop a whole club approach. So offering training and consultation, for example, to the players, to the coaches, to the parents about what they can be doing in the context of the club to really nurture psychological well-being and develop resilience. And all of these are being done as pilots, and if they evaluate well, then obviously we'll want to extend that much further. We think, for example, sports coaches have got a really well placed to have good relationships with children and young people. And, you know, as an example of that, a sports coach said to me not so long ago, you know, Rhiannon, we're really well trained in safeguarding issues. So if a young person says to me, my mum and dad fight a lot and my dad is hitting my mum, I will know exactly what to do about that in terms of a safeguarding referral. What I don't know how to do is how to talk to that young person about what's happening to them, how to sit with some of the distress, how to manage some of the more challenging behaviour they then present with. That's what we need help with. And I think that's where psychology is really well placed to support those professionals in holding on to those young people and supporting those young people. We've got other examples of what's happening in Gwent. So, for example, we've got the whole schools approach, where we've got a team of people working with schools to identify the key ingredients to support a culture of well-being within education. We've also got an attachment service that is working with different organisations to support more trauma and attachment informed ways of working. So there's a huge amount going on within Gwent itself to shake things up, not medicalise young people, but to try and support people within the context of their ordinary relationships.
Thank you so much for that answer. I'll move on to the next question, which is from Bryn Mawr Foundation School, and this question is also directed to Dr. Cobner. And the question is, what advice do you give to young people who are suffering with their mental health during COVID?
Again, another fabulous question, and a really pertinent and important question right now. The first thing that I would say is that this is an incredibly difficult time for everyone. And as Pam was saying a little bit earlier, an incredibly difficult time for our children and young people who arguably have been disproportionately affected as a result of this pandemic. So the first point is this is extremely understandable that anybody would be struggling with their mental health. I think that, you know, back in March of last year, the rug was pulled from under the feet of our children and young people almost overnight. Schools were closed, after school clubs finished, no structure or routine to children and young people's daily lives. And we know that all of those things are so important to our sense of well-being. We need structure, we need routines, we need a sense of identity from going to school, belonging to different clubs, and all of this was taken away from us. You've had to manage an incredible change, and we know that however old we are, change is one of the things that we find most difficult in life. You know, layered on top of that, even in the best of circumstances, this is difficult. But what we know also is that adults have been understandably struggling. We are seeing increases in adult mental health difficulties, increases in incidents of domestic violence, of drug and alcohol misuse with adults. And there will be children living at home with some of those adults who are struggling, which will again create difficulties for those children and young people. So, you know, this is multi-layered and this is really difficult. What I would say, though, is that we know that this is going to change. Nevermore has mental health, it's been so obvious that our mental health is contextually bound, that how we feel is largely a result of our circumstances. And those circumstances are going to change. We're going to come out of COVID, so we will go back to school and life will resume. So in that sense, there's light at the end of the tunnel. But fundamentally, we need to keep talking to each other. We need to choose a safe adult that we can talk to, that we can confide in. We need to be sharing how it is that we're feeling, and people need to be helping us to know when we need to seek out specialist help. But for the vast majority, I feel confident things will get better over time naturally.
Lovely, thank you for that answer. So I'm going to go to the next question now, which is from the Caerphilly Youth Forum for the Chief Constable. So the question is, do police officers have enough mental health training to be able to spot signs of anxiety and panic that could be mistaken as aggression?
Okay, so first of all, isn't it wonderful that we're actually talking about mental health within this forum? So really, really positive questions here. So just to give you an idea as to how many calls, first of all, the police deal with in relation to mental health. And generally when people are in crisis, of course, the police are called. So in 2019, just over 12,000 calls were received here at Gwent Police to deal with people who were struggling with mental health. And this year, we've already seen a significant increase by about 19% to nearly 15,000 calls for service to respond to people who are in crisis. And so, of course, we do have training. We have officer safety training, first aid training, and we do have some police medics as well. But as Rhiannon has just said, mental health is very complex, it's hugely complex, and it's specialist. So our staff do have training, especially in terms of how to deal with acute behavioural disturbance and to recognise when people are either panicking or anxious. And of course, what we use is a conflict management structure. So we start always off by negotiating and chatting with people, calming people down, reassuring people. And then only then do we actually move up in terms of having to restrain people. But what we have to help us are of course specialists. So thanks to the Commissioner, in our control room where people dial in terms of 101 or 999, we have a mental health triage team that works 24/7. And they are made up of approved mental health professionals, social workers, psychiatric nurses, and they basically have access to health and social services data so that when police are called, we have a really good understanding of any background in relation to that individual that we need to be mindful of. Because what we want to do is make sure that we give the best service possible to that person who may be struggling at that time. Again, because policing isn't the right agency for somebody who's struggling with mental health. issues. But because we work 24/7 and sometimes people are in crisis, police are called. So we always endeavour to make sure that we first of all understand the person's situation, the background information, and then of course make sure we give the right level of service. We also make sure, many of you might have heard of Mind Cymru, which is a great organisation here in Wales. So we also make sure that our officers and staff are aware of mental health, the impact on them, but also some of the signs that Mind Cymru have trained us in terms of identifying mental health and those people in crisis when we respond to calls. So we do have a significant amount of training. We also have a lot of learning the lessons that we learn about our response. Could we do with more? Always, because as I've already said, 14,000 calls for service. So mental health in our community is something we all need to be aware of, and we all need to work together on. And policing is one of those agencies that works very closely with other partners in terms of understanding and doing our best to respond to mental health cases and concerns in the community.
Thank you for that great answer. I will now move on to the next question, which is also directed to the Chief Constable. And the question is from Caerphilly Youth Forum again. If restraint has to be used, are there ways to ensure it is as least distressing as possible?
Yes, so I mentioned earlier the conflict management model that we use, so always engaging with people, and only if people are becoming violent and are a danger to others would we ever restrain. So yes, we do everything we can to avoid restraint, but if we do, then we do that through really good dialogue with the individual that's concerned, and obviously in terms of our training, we do that carefully in terms of the individual that might need restraining. And what we also do is we have body-worn video. All officers have body-worn video. And of course, when people are distressed and concerned, and then restrained, there's always questions. So what we do is record everything on body-worn video to make sure, first of all, that we do our best for the individual and we record that to share with them at a later date or their families. But then also for us to learn as well, because we're always wanting to learn as an organisation. But restraint is always a last resort for us. If we do that, we have to record the fact that we've done it as well in terms of our paper, in terms of use of restraint. So we record everything because we want to be sure that what we do is proportionate and necessary in light with what stress that person might be under. So everything is there and recorded, along with, of course, that training, which is crucial for police officers before they're able to restrain people in the first place. Mr. Cuthbert.
Yeah, thank you very much. Charlotte, this is an important issue, and it's something that can be very controversial. And the Chief Constable is absolutely right. There is good training. There's precautions taken in terms of the use of body-worn video, so that if things are said that may be not quite correct, there is some evidence one way or the other to actually show what has happened. Also, of course, things can go wrong, and then it's important that that's identified and corrections are made. But we do, through my office, we do scrutinise the use of force, as we call it, and we have a scrutiny committee that looks at instances where restraints may have to be used, and especially if there's been a challenge. And we try to get to the bottom of whatever may have happened. So it's not an open book. There is most definitely safeguards built in. And that's why, in the main, it's not challenged, because it seemed to be proportionate and appropriate. And after all, we do have to think not only of the well-being of the person who's being restrained, but others perhaps involved in the incident as well. And of course, the police officers themselves. We don't want them to be injured, which unfortunately has happened in a number of cases.
Thank you for the fab answer, both. So I'm going to go on to the next question now. which is from the Newport Youth Forum to Nicola Fitzpatrick. So, have youth hostels seen a rise in the numbers since COVID?
Okay, thank you for asking this. I'm not sure how to follow some of these other questions. They've been fantastic, but for us, having a look at some of the data that's come out, I think it'll be no surprise really that all of our young people services have seen an increase in referrals. So what we have is the storm really, and the COVID storm that we've seen about young people being at home a lot more, but also the hidden homeless, as people tend to call hidden homeless. So that might be young people that haven't got a stable space to stay, and they might have been staying at friends' houses or wider family members who have then said, you know, you can't stay here much longer. What we have seen is a huge increase in family breakdowns, which is leading then into young people being asked to leave the family home, or young people that are living with increased mental health issues, domestic abuse issues going on in their family home, and they're running away from that. So looking at some of the data that we've got, what we have seen is an increase in demand for services across the two bigger areas of Gwent, which is Caerphilly and Newport, the more populated areas, and the accommodation provision isn't there to meet the needs for them young people. So unfortunately, we're seeing young people being housed in bed and breakfasts, being moved out of county and having to be housed in other local authority areas, which is going to cause us a longer term concern. And every service has got waiting lists and are dealing with heightened demand, and the crisis element is there. And I think like Rhiannon was saying earlier, through mental health services and looking at community psychology, we're seeing the impact of that across the young people that we're working with as well, because everything is a lot more crisis point when they access our services. So they are accessing as directly homeless at that time. So we've seen it across the board, from our early intervention services, so family mediation teams that are trying to keep young people and remaining within the family home as much as they can, as long as it's safe to do so. They've seen an increase in referrals. The Gwent Missing Young People scheme has seen a heightened increase in young people running away from their circumstance, and all of this is accumulating in young people feeling unsafe in the homes that they're in, or not being able to reside, or being asked to leave the homes that they're in, and presenting through homelessness.
Thank you, Nicola. I've just seen a message in the chat from Claire. I think we're due to come to the break time, but Claire, if one of your young people wants to ask the last question for this section, and if that's okay with you, Darcy and Charlotte, they can go ahead, and then we'll take a break after the answers.
Hi, I'm Saskia. Are there any procedures in place that keep rough sleepers safe from drunk people, those who are against the homelessness, those that are wanting to incite violence?
Do you want me to start from because this is a joint police and provider question, isn't it? So I can say from a provision perspective, when COVID initially first started, if you like, if we concentrate on from the last year, there was a huge drive to get homeless rough sleepers off the streets and into safe accommodation. What we have seen is over their months, some people that may have been, sleeping in a tent in the city centre for a long time have really struggled to be accommodated in some of them units and not felt it was appropriate for them, and have moved back onto the streets. But all local communities have schemes in place to make sure that we're working with street homeless, that we're not that they're not completely invisible and forgotten about, and there's units that can go out and meet with people that are currently living on the streets, and just make sure that they're feeling safe, that they're in a safe space, that they've got provisions and some of the basic provisions like food and drink to see them through, but also provide opportunities for them to talk, to look at safe spaces to sleep. And I think, we'd be naive to think that we can eradicate street homelessness by just providing walls around people and putting them into accommodation. Some people feel like they can only survive on the streets because they've been doing it for so long, or they gravitate back towards that. So it's making sure that there's opportunity to constantly engage with them people whilst we're there. And It might be through having conversations about sleeping in places with lighting, with CCTV nearby, and just things that they can do in order to make sure that they feel as safe as they can in the circumstances that they are.
Okay, and I've been asked to comment against that question as well. It really worries me in terms of post-COVID, so after COVID, what does homelessness actually look like in our communities? So there are people, and there are some great hostels in our Force area that are helping look after the homeless community at the moment, and I've been in contact with them, and there's a lot of people, very young people in these hostels that will soon then be either going back out onto the streets or hopefully finding accommodation, and the hostels are doing some great work. My concern is that after COVID, there could be an increase in homelessness. So we know, and this was only about a month ago, that 42,000 people in the UK are potentially could be evicted from their homes. So people who perhaps haven't been able to keep up with their rent and everything else, who would have been evicted if it wasn't for COVID, could well be evicted over the coming months and years. So we could have more people homeless, which we have to try and avoid over the coming months. And the question has been very clear about what do we do to protect. Now, let me reassure you that if crimes are committed against homeless people in our community, we take them very, very seriously, because homeless people are generally very vulnerable. And therefore, crimes committed against our homeless community, if reported to us, will absolutely be dealt with robustly. But what we do have is some great partnership working. So Caerphilly, where the question has been posed from, there's some community safety wardens working very closely with us. Local authorities are working very closely with us, and of course charities and third sector as well. So we're doing absolutely everything that we can. But I think this is something, it's a really good question, because I don't think we now know what the homeless community looks like because of some of the activity during COVID. So we're going to need to reassess across Gwent what our homeless community looks like, what support they need, and what we can to support people who decide to remain on the streets. Some people have no choice but to remain on the streets, but we will do everything that we can to support them. But let me reassure you, crimes committed against homeless people by anyone are treated very seriously here at Gwent.
Fab, thank you both for that response, and Darcy and Charlotte, thank you for asking the questions on people's behalves. It's time for a quick break now. Go and grab yourselves a drink, pop to the loo, do whatever you fancy, and we'll reconvene at 5 o'clock. Please don't leave the call, but feel free to turn your mics and cameras off, and we'll see you at 5. See you all.
I'm sorry, I gotta go.
That's all right. Thank you for.
I was about to do the question, to ask you a question.
Do you want to put it in the chat and we'll get to it straight after the second half? And it's being recorded, so you'll get the response, or you can email it to us as well if you'd like. It's totally up to you.
Yep, I'll send you the question.
Fab. Thank you.
I have to turn my phone, and also gotta leave because I don't need to clash to the other meeting.
That's all right. Enjoy your.
Fine, Hugh. You can leave the meeting now, and we can have one of the other reps to ask the question for you if you like.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put the question on here, and then maybe you can let me know on the youth chat.
Yeah, we will let you know, Hugh. I'll let you know the response, okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'll be back in touch with you. If you post your question in the chat, we'll sort that out for you.
Yeah, I'm just turning the phone on a minute.
Okay, that's fine.
A question sent.
Thank you, Hugh, thus far.
Goodbye.
Bye. Enjoy your meeting. Bye.
Goodbye.
Right, I promised I'd start talking again at 5, and lucky for you guys, I know. It's nice to see a couple of faces back. As soon as I see a couple more come up, I will begin the second half. It's a shame, you know, that we're not in person. We haven't got a buffet like usual. But next year we'll have to make it even better, won't we? I think Domino's. Domino's, yeah? Anyone else agree? Yeah. Chief Constable said yes, we've got it. It's happening.
We'll ask the Commissioner to pay, Maisie.
Oh, of course. Come on, guys, don't be shy. Come back. I miss you all already. Turn your cameras on. Give us a wave. Let me know that you're here. You haven't run away.
I'm here.
Perfect. Don't know who. You know what? Because there's so many of us, I can't see everyone on the screen. The joys of working online, am I right? As soon as I see that the commissioner's on, I'll make a start.
Well, I am on. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. And so without further rambling, Croeso on all, welcome back. It's now the second half, and I do apologise, but you're going to have to deal with my voice again through this half, but also my lovely friend Kieran from Torfaen Young People's Forum will be asking some of the questions, but we're also going to throw it to you guys, the ones who have submitted them. So get ready. If we call upon your organisation, I hope you'll be ready to ask. Okay, so I'll kick off the first part. It's a question from Monmouthshire, Engaged to Change. Did anyone want to ask this question? Question 10 on transphobia, I believe. Going once, going twice. I'm happy to ask it. Okay. Oh, go on.
Yeah, sorry, can I ask the question?
Go for it.
Our question is, transphobic hate crime, you don't feel protected. Two people whose lives were changed by transphobic attacks say that they wouldn't go to the police again. How can you ensure the safety when people come forward to report for transphobic hate crimes?
Okay, thank you for that question. The first thing I would say is it really concerns me that there are two people who wouldn't come forward and report again. And, you know, I am more than happy if those two people wanted to get in touch with me so that we do provide support and that I review those incidents that they've reported. So that's the first thing, that if there are two people out there who have been subject to transphobic hate crime, then please tell them that they're welcome to contact me, because I want to make sure that they get the support, and I would want to make sure that I review those incidents. Now, I think it's fair to say, and Ed Watts, Mr. Ed Watts is on the line, and Ed works very closely with our independent advisory group, who really help us and challenge us to make sure that we do things properly in terms of hate crime and other crimes. And I think it's fair to say that policing over the years haven't always got this right. But I do know that at this moment in time, every hate crime that's reported to Gwent Police, we have hate crime officers who are specialist trained in this area of work to be able to give that support for transphobic, racist, any type of hate crime. We take very, very seriously. And I'm really pleased to say that we're also working on a new victims care unit that again takes very seriously hate crime. And again, with the Commissioner's Office, we've got a Connect Gwent, which has a specialist children and young victim service within Connect Gwent. So we absolutely take hate crime very seriously, transphobic hate crime very seriously, because I know how hard it must be for people to report hate crime in the first place. To be able to pick up the phone when perhaps people may be feeling isolated and or not feel that they want to report hate crime. When they do that, it has a massive link to public confidence. So I check and test how we're responding to hate crime in Gwent Police. The Commissioner's Office check and test what we're doing. I am the first to say we haven't always got this right. But what I would say to the panel here today and to the young people who are a part of today's discussion, would you please tell me if things are not working? If you're experiencing or your friends are experiencing something that's not working, then I really need to know about it. Ed Watts, you can report it to Ed Watts, anything that you're concerned about, the Commissioner's Office and myself. So I think we're improving. I think anybody who suffers hate crime, I want to be there for them, and I want my officers and staff to respond professionally, quickly, and diligently to make sure that people feel strength in reporting. And somebody's just put in the chat, Umbrella Cymru. We work very closely with Umbrella Cymru for our LGBTQ+ community. So I really need you to support me on this one. And those two young people that you say would never report it to the police again, please ask them to make contact with me, because I want to make sure, I want to listen, and we put it right. But please, you are the young people, you are the future. If policing isn't right and we're not working properly in terms of hate crime, I want to know about it. But I do believe that we've made some great strides in terms of investigating hate crime, training people in terms of hate crime, and we actually monitor every single hate crime that's reported here at Gwent Police. But if we've got it wrong, please tell me. As young people, I want you to feel confident in reporting these issues to your Chief Constable. I'm your Chief Constable, as well as the broader community and adults in the Gwent area as well.
Can I just add a few points? I fully endorse what the Chief Constable has just said, and like Pam, I too am upset to hear that there are some young people, I assume they're young people, who are no longer prepared to come forward because obviously they must have had a poor experience, and that is absolutely regrettable. And I hope they come forward and in confidence and tell us what went wrong for them so that we can try to correct it. We mentioned Ed Watts, who's on the call from Scouts and is also the chair of the Gwent Association of Voluntary Organisations, works very closely with us on a whole range of issues. He and I are of a similar age, and we remember when it was actually illegal to be homosexual. You went to jail if you were caught. It was a criminal offence. I remember that. Ed will remember it. And we've come an awful long way since those days, thank goodness. But there is still a way to go. And we do have to ensure that all our services are fair to everybody. We treat everyone on their own merits. There is no bias, whether it's unconscious bias or deliberate bias, that is allowed to get into any form of public services, and that certainly includes the police. So we mentioned Umbrella Cymru. That is an organisation that my office commissions, and we intend to keep doing that. So we want to be as supportive as we can to everybody who needs assistance within Gwent. And it's very important indeed that people understand that, and that you encourage people who may have had a poor experience to come forward and to tell us in confidence what happened to them. Otherwise, we're not able to correct it.
Thank you both. Amazing responses on that question. The next question is directed to Chief Constable and is from Momisha CC Engaged to Change, and the topic is biased officers. So if Momisha wants to ask the question fully. Three, two, one. All right, I'll answer it. I'll ask it. So, what do the police officers do to address bias that officers may have within the force?
Now, this is, and I don't know who asked this question, but it's superb and hugely current, because we all have biases. Every single one of us have a bias against a whole array of things, a whole array of things. The important thing is that we're aware of those biases, that we're aware of those biases that are part of our thinking. But in Gwent Police, it's really important that our staff don't work through those biases when they're policing. So some people might think, oh, all young people get into trouble. Whereas I think all young people are fantastic, and I love being with young people because they make me smile, they've got plenty of energy, and they can help me change things for the future. Some people might not like older people because they moan and groan all the time, or they, you know, from their perspective, they moan and groan all the time and they don't get things done. That's a bias, just as people have biases towards all sorts of people and backgrounds and issues. But in policing, it is hugely important that we are impartial, that we work professionally and fairly with everyone. So what I've done alongside the Commissioner since being the Chief Constable here at Gwent is that every single police officer has training in what we call unconscious bias. So we really pick out what people's biases are, because self-awareness in terms of bias is really important, absolutely essential. And unless you're self-aware, you end up actually applying a bias in the way that you police. And that is totally unacceptable. What we also do, and what I do, is when we recruit leaders for the future, because I want to change culture. I'm really pleased about some of the culture in Gwent Police, but there's some of the culture I need to change. So whenever I am looking for somebody to be a sergeant or to be a leader in Gwent Police, and I'm hoping there's a few people on the line here, if about 30–40% of you join Gwent Police, I would be delighted. So think about Gwent Police as a career for the future, because we need young people such as yourself to join us. But when I think about leadership and when I think about supervision and management, I want people who understand what bias and unconscious bias is. And so when I am recruiting leaders in Gwent Police, I always research and talk to them and ask them a question in their promotion boards about bias. And I want them to be open about their biases, and I want them to be open about how they're going to help me lead and make sure that people understand bias. Because it is dangerous. Bias, if you're not aware of it, is dangerous. And then all of a sudden you have prejudices that come in, and your prejudices and everything else turn into actions on a street, which means that we're not actually policing fairly and appropriately. So I challenge bias all of the time. It's a massive part of what we need to do in leadership, and a huge part of what you as young people need to be aware of going forward, so that we eliminate prejudice, we eliminate some of these things that cause hate and concerns in our community. But yes, it's a massive part of what we're trying to do in terms of cultural awareness here at Gwent Police.
Thank you so much, Chief Constable. The next question is from Caerphilly Youth Forum. It's directed to Chief Constable, Police Crime Commissioner Nicola Fitzpatrick, and it's on the topic of domestic violence. So I'll give Caerphilly a chance to ask.
Hello, my name is Kieran. Has there been an increase in domestic abuse crimes due to lockdown?
Commissioner, do you want me to go first?
Yes, you go first, yes.
Okay, so whereas throughout the COVID crisis, we've seen a significant reduction in crime, generally about 15%, but we've actually seen an increase in incidents or calls for service. In terms of domestic abuse, we have seen an increase in crime. And I'm really pleased about this, because what it means is that people feel comfortable reporting crime. So, for example, we've seen an increase of around about 203 crimes, which means that we've seen an increase of 17% in terms of domestic abuse. But it's really interesting, because between 20 and 24% generally of our violent crime, which people always think violent crime is people fighting in the pubs or on the street, actually nearly a quarter of our violent crime is actually within the house with domestic abuse. So it's really important for me, and this for me is one of my significant priorities. I think domestic abuse is cruel. There is nothing worse than being in a house where with adult to adult or a child living with adults where there's domestic abuse. There is nothing worse. And during the COVID crisis, where people haven't been able to go anywhere, I think victims of domestic abuse have been even more isolated. So I am really pleased that we've seen this increase. I think there's much more domestic abuse that is happening that is not reported to the police. And again, as young people going forward, let's be a society that doesn't tolerate domestic abuse. Let's be a society as young people that says we're not having it, because nobody should be suffering with domestic abuse at home. And young people who are seeing or are experiencing domestic abuse, they don't need to put up with it either. So, you know, it's really important that when we talk about mental health, one of the biggest impacts on some of our victims, their mental health, is where they've suffered domestic abuse over a long period of time. And of course, that could be physical, it could be coercive control, where people are controlling finances and other issues. And you know, many of you are much more technical than I am. But as you know, with our smart devices, people can manage their heating, their fridges and freezers from their phones. And what I'm experiencing is coercive control being through technology, where, you know, an offender won't let a victim go into the fridge, or they'll turn the heating down so that people are really cold in order to control. So let's think about domestic abuse in lots of ways, not just in the traditional way that many of us think in terms of violence, verbal violence or physical violence in the home. But we have seen increased reporting. You might have seen myself and the Commissioner and many others on TV, on radio, social media, pushing for people to report domestic abuse, because I've been really worried about people feeling isolated during the COVID crisis. So I'm delighted with the increase in reporting. I want people to report more. And I would love for you as young people who, you know, I want you to have the best future possible here at Gwent. I want you as young people to not tolerate domestic abuse in your lives and to walk away from it when you can, and or if you can't, to know that there are services out there who can support you, police and other agencies. Be a generation that doesn't tolerate domestic abuse. And I'd be really grateful if you let police support you and other agencies support you if you experience domestic abuse now or in the future.
Thank you very much for that.
If I could just add very quickly, fully endorse what the Chief Constable has just said, and make it absolutely clear that we support that point of view very, very strongly. Overwhelmingly, victims of domestic abuse are women, not exclusively, but overwhelmingly they are. And that's one of the reasons why in my office, as we do right across Wales, we support the White Ribbon Day, which is very much about opposition to violence against women and girls. And it's critically important here, and it's really excellent that rugby teams, soccer teams, men will line up to actually support in a very public way this campaign. And it's only by doing things like this do we change attitudes, because it's totally unacceptable in this day and age. Whether the actual numbers of victims of domestic abuse has increased during COVID, it's difficult to say for certain. I think that probably is the case when you think about people suddenly obliged to stay at home, perhaps in a place that is threatening for them, not safe at all. And it must have been horrendous. But there are agencies, including the Welsh Government, who will work with us to try and make people more aware of the support that's out there and encourage people to make their views known, whether they themselves are experiencing domestic abuse or they know of others who are experiencing it, to bring that information forward and to get help. It's very important that this is regarded as totally unacceptable, and by working together, we can make a difference.
I totally agree. I've seen a few things in the chat about white ribbon ambassadors, and someone's asked whether anyone can be trained to be ambassadors, and I believe they can. There is a website, White Ribbon UK. It's a fantastic campaign. We worked on it at Torvine back at the end of last year, and it's great. So get involved if you can. And I'm also going to go off script here and ask a question from the chat. It sort of leads on from a few things that we've discussed, and maybe especially the question about transphobia and bias in the force. And it says, following on from previous questions regarding negative experiences with the police, what is being done to rebuild trust within ethnic minority groups who feel that trust has been broken with the police service due to negative experiences? And so I guess that's aimed at the Chief Constable and maybe even the Crime Commissioner too.
Okay, so first of all, you know, if there are negative experiences, and you know, there's obviously an incident that's been on the media recently that I'm unable to comment on, but I just want us to stop and think about relationships in particular with our BME communities, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. So at Gwent Police, the Commissioner and I have been in dialogue constantly with key stakeholders in our communities and seeking views on what we can do differently to build public confidence. And I would say it's not all negative. We have some great relationships with people of all faiths, of all backgrounds within our communities that I'm really proud of. What I will say is, if things are wrong, then I would be the first to listen. Have we got further work to do in terms of building confidence? Well, 7 out of 10 of our community members very recently, out of about 1,500 people, said that they were confident in Gwent Police. It does lower when we talk to BME community members to between 4 and 5 out of 10. So we've got some work to do in terms of building public confidence. What I'm trying to do, and it's really important that the people understand this and speak to friends, I want our organisation, your organisation, which is Gwent Police, because we are your organisation, to be more representative of our communities. So at the moment, we're only about 2% of our workforce are from a BME community. I want that to increase. So we have got a significant recruitment campaign running at the moment, where we've got probably about 160 new recruits just for police officers, let alone community support officers, special constables, police cadets, who I want to get through the door over the next 2 years. Now, I want to see an increased representative workforce. I want to see more BME members of our community in Gwent Police to help me build confidence and help me build trust with communities. I don't think it's as bad as what people think. We have got a lot of work to do, but I think I can do that with great people such as Ed Watts advising me in the community and advising the senior leaders here. But I really want you to encourage people from our BME communities to join policing, because that's the only way I think that we can make sure that we reflect the community that we serve.
Fab, thank you. Did you want to add anything?
No, not really. I think that, in all honesty, let's move on. The Chief Constable has dealt with the issues, so I don't want to just repeat things.
Mm-hmm. I see, Nicola, you've raised a hand. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, but apologies, because I'm just going to take you back to the domestic abuse question, only because I think there's a really pertinent point within that. So not negating everything that's just been spoken about, but I didn't want to miss just highlighting this. So where, from a policing perspective, they've seen an increase of, I think it was 17%, you said, in domestic abuse related calls. As a provider of services in Gwent, what we have seen through lockdown is a significant higher number. So we do an annual sort of spot survey with everybody that we're supporting. So just to give you some context, we support about 2,000 people a year, and around 70%, and it doesn't tend to move, but about 70% of the people have had no interaction with the police. So part of our role is to encourage that and to actually ask people to report, because these are crimes. But throughout COVID, what we have seen is a massive increase in referrals. So, and I've got the data here, 181% increase in community-based referrals. So people wanting support in their own homes, feeling safe in their own homes, and an 85% increase in people trying to access our crisis emergency accommodation. And that, scarily, what we have seen that has decreased is referrals for children and young people that are living with domestic abuse in their family homes has gone down. And my fear around that is, as children and young people aren't in their education settings, they're not accessing their youth and community groups, their safe spaces to raise their concerns, disclose what's going on, or for somebody to say, look, are you okay, are all have pretty much disappeared, which it kind of goes back to my point earlier about, you know, checking in with your friends. And I just think it's really important that as services, and it really is the message that I keep hearing throughout this session today, is use your voices and use your generation to call this behaviour out, because it's so hidden. And now we're gaining the momentum about saying it is safe. You can still contact, services aren't closed, we're all still here. And just looking at the next question on your list really is about what we're doing to engage, raising our voices to remind people that all domestic abuse provision has continued to run 24 hours a day, day in, day out through this pandemic, and the support is there should people need it. And it's just a really important message. You've such a strength in young people, and especially with your social media skills, to keep raising that awareness and keep highlighting the provisions that are out there.
Thank you, Nicola. We are running out of time tonight, unfortunately, but if you haven't had the chance to ask a question, then I promise we will get those responses to you in writing. I'm going to end with one question, which when I saw the questions was my favourite all along, and it's, how do we raise the aspirations of young people who live in deprived areas? And it's come from Bryn Mawr Foundation School, and I'm going to go first to Anita to answer, but I think you can all contribute to this one. I think it's a fab question, so diolch to Bryn Mawr.
It is an excellent question, and it's also really important to say that just because you live in a deprived area does by no means mean that you are not going to successfully, excel in life. And the other thing to remember is that one person's aspirations are very different from another person's aspirations. So being happy in what you choose to do is so important when it comes to things like that. So with regards to the work that careers do with aspirations, we find that a lot of the reason people struggle a little bit is because they don't necessarily know what's available for them. They may not have, they may be in a household where no one works, or where they've not had much to do with the workforce. So they forget that there are, when they leave school, there's loads of options available, such as work-based training, apprenticeships, college, sixth form, voluntary work, employment, and within each of those are different strands going in different directions. But one of the main things that I think that we've said about today is the importance of talking to people. So in terms of improving aspirations, within communities and within talking to other people, I think it's really important that you talk. We encourage, so when I work with young people, I encourage them to talk to friends and family and professionals, because it's very easy to think that we've just walked into our jobs, straight into our careers as we are. But I think if you speak to many other people, you will find that our careers have gone in very weird, crazy paving journeys. And it doesn't necessarily mean when you leave school that you know exactly what you want to do. So it's very much a case that a lot of people take stepping stones in different directions. But there is so much support available within those communities, and we're constantly trying to support those young people and support them into kind of seeing what else is out there and exploring those options. I don't know if I've covered kind of what you're looking for there. But I think it's keeping up the communication within every agency to try and support these young people into moving on. There's also some great case studies. For example, there was a lady who was on a BBC programme called Sabrina, who was living on Newport streets for 2 years and selling The Big Issue. And she travelled to Monmouth to raise more money so she could rent a tiny flat in the valleys, and then she joined the fire brigade, and she's now one of the top firefighters. So it's tapping into great success stories, both with famous people and with everybody on the street. You know, your next door neighbour who would have a great success story if you were to speak to them.
Thank you. I think you nailed it right away. And that, you know, the place that you're brought up in doesn't define your success. I see that the Chief Constable has got her hand risen, so add whatever you like.
Yes, so I really want to come in here because I feel really strongly about this. And you know, for me, what I see with young people from deprived communities is that there's a lack of confidence. That people think that because they perhaps, you know, can't afford, you know, the poshest phone or the best laptop, or, you know, parents have had trouble getting work and everything else, they feel embarrassed or they lack confidence. And I would say this is that their most perception isn't reality. So a lot of people in great jobs making a difference, and you see people on television, I actually find that people from more difficult communities who've had to struggle are really resilient and bring an awful lot to the table. You know, and I'm really proud to say I'm from a one-parent family. I had school meals a free school meals when I was younger, and you know, really struggled to get through university and have come out the other end. And I think the reality is, yes, there may be hardship, but where there's hardship, you have people who are innovative, creative, and that have resilience. And all we've got to do is open doors to support young people in our communities. And opening doors is critical. Communication, confidence building, making sure that people realise that they have so much to offer. And so for me, you know, let's not use this word deprived communities as if people can be held back. Yes, they might find it a bit harder than others, but once they go through the right door, there is nothing to hold young people back. So, you know, we need to make sure that confidence is available to young people to express themselves and to know that everybody has so much to offer, and young people today should not let hardship hold them back. A lot of people are struggling financially at the moment. A lot of people sometimes are struggling because of mental health in their homes, or they're finding it really difficult to break out. And it's our responsibility as key leaders in policing and in agencies to not just open doors, to smash them open so the young people can walk through and thrive in the future.
Thank you.
If I could just add very quickly to that, this has been a matter of burning passion for me for many, many years. I used to be a Welsh Government minister, and I had responsibilities for Communities First and a whole range of skills and employment policies. And it's absolutely right, and especially at a time when the economy has taken a really serious knock as a result of COVID, that we don't forget some of those young people who are now desperately searching for a way forward so that they are not going to be condemned to a life of idleness or dead-end jobs. And it's incumbent upon all of us, whether we're engaged in the private sector or the public sector or the third sector, to go out of our way to actually provide that extra support to young people, because we mustn't, those that come from what we call disadvantaged communities, we mustn't pretend that they won't face extra barriers. They will, that have been ingrained maybe over generations. So it's very important that we go that extra mile to make it clear that they're as capable as anyone else and their future is in their hands. We'll give them whatever support we possibly can. And those of us that can provide jobs, like policing and other public services, that we do go out of our way to see how we can make those types of jobs attractive. Now, I know that for many young people in disadvantaged communities, there's an alienation with authority, never mind policing. But what we have to do is to overcome that and say, this is a good career. This is what it really is about. Try it, and let's see how we go. And we may have to put in some extra measures to help that along, but it's going to be worth it in the end, because the people we'll recruit will be amongst the best, and society will gain back enormously from that investment. It's not just about helping those young people, it's about helping society as a whole.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask you all one final question. I want you to give me one word to describe tonight's event, and we're going to do it quick fire. Commissioner, I'm going to put you on the spot to go first. Describe tonight in one word for us.
Excellent.
Thank you. And Pam?
Powerful.
Nicola?
Go for it, inspiring.
Fantastic. Anita?
Oh, I want all of the other ones. No, let's do that. Very insightful. Can that be one word?
Of course. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Thank you all. I was going to say thank you all extremely very much. That makes no English sense. Thank you all very much. I'm going to pass over to Chloe now to close the event. But from me, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. It's been lovely to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions, and to the panel for joining us this afternoon. It was great to hear such a variety of questions around a number of really important issues. We hope that you have enjoyed this session. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone in this session that we have learned something extremely helpful to help us for the future. Well, that is it for Gwent Youth Question Time event. If you have been affected by any of the issues raised today, we have youth workers who will be staying online, or please talk to your teacher or someone you trust. Please can I remind you to take just a few minutes to fill out the online survey which is in the chat box. Noswaith dda, good evening. I hope you all have a very good night.
Noswaith dda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers and all our panel members. Amazing event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
To those who are still on the call, a reminder that we will get the answers out to you. That's a promise. Even if I've got to write them myself.
Thank you all. Thank you guys for setting it all up and for hosting it. Hopefully we can be in touch soon with our cadets and our youth engagement opportunities with you. That'd be really great if we can. I think Ree was going to send out a link to see what we can do to try and work together with our team. So whatever we can do, we're happy to help.
Yeah, if that's okay, I'll send Ree and Claire your email details to Deek. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Sure. Thank you, Maisie. That was awesome.
Chris, did you want me to stay on?
Yeah, you could just hang on just until
Sure thing.
just to grab you quickly at the end.
Sure thing.
I'm just checking. Do you have any young people that wanted to speak to a youth worker at all? Me and Ray have stayed on the call, because if we do, we'd have to all leave the meeting and end the recording, or is everybody gone? Oh, I think everybody's left.
I'll stop the recording now.
It's just Charlotte. Is that it? Yeah, it's still on.
I can see there's 2 left on there, so I was just